All right, so in this video, I'm going to review my alternative hotel model. So I built this model because my other hotel model is very robust. It's very complex. There's tons of macros in it, and it's got a lot of optionality. The model that I have here is much more basic. It still has a lot of functionality, but it's a much simpler version. There are no macros. And so this might be an efficient model for many of you. So I wanted to create an alternative version to that robust sort of beastly hotel model that I built. So this is the alternative version. I'll go through a high-level overview of each tab and what it can do. A lot of this is very similar to the original hotel model. It's just simplified a bit. So high level, you see we have our summary tab. And we'll go through each tab more individually after I give the high-level overview. We have our cash flow summary tab. We have our operating cash flow tab here. And we have our waterfall tab. Now, let's start off with the summary tab. So a lot of this is identical, as I said, to the other hotel model. All of these tabs exist in that other model. It's just I've removed a couple things. I've removed the penetration analysis, and I've removed the year one pro forma. So we'll do a high-level overview. So we have our general info and timing here. The rooms, the keys, the acquisition start date, where here you will put in your month and you will put in your year, and then you can do your hold period. And it's up to 10 years. So, as with the other model, for example, let's say we want to do a 5-year hold. What happens is that this auto formats to cut down to exactly 5 years. And I believe the waterfall model does that as well. So again, we go back to 10 years and you'll see that this opens back up to 10 years, and so does the waterfall model. All right, so again, we have our acquisitions assumptions, and you have 3 options. You can do a cap rate on year one NOI, you can do the discount rate, or you can do a custom input. Oh, and I have circular reference here, so I'll have to figure out what's going on there, and I will have that fixed for the model. So let's do that. Let's just undo. And then you have your acquisitions costs, which is a percent of basically the purchase price. And this excludes the lender's fees, which we include our lender's fees down here. And then we have our transfer PIP, or our major capital improvement reserve. And now this is really, if you have a flag or a franchise, when the building is sold, they have the opportunity to basically enforce a major upgrade so that the building will, stay in line with the local market, stay in line with brand standards, and just, it really gives basically the property, both the owner and the flag, it gives them an opportunity to make sure that this building is earning revenue and producing as well as possible. So it really makes sure that the building's well positioned. And so that's really what this transfer PIP is. All right, so moving on, we have our financing assumptions. We have all the usual suspects here. We have our loan to value, the interest rate, loan fees, and then we have the ability to do interest-only periods. All right, and then below that, we have our exit assumptions, which we have our exit cap rate, which is basically valued against the following year after sales NOI to give us our sale price. We have our sales expenses, and then we have our net sales proceeds, both unlevered and levered. All right, so moving up, we have our property level returns, and this is all coming in from our waterfall model. So you have our cash outflow, our profit, IRR, and multiple on invested capital. And then below that, we have our property level return metrics, both on an unlevered and levered basis. And then below that, we have our property metrics based on what we purchased the property for and what we're selling it for. And this is really a way to look at, how much did this property increase in value per key and in aggregate. And then below that, we have our debt metrics. So we have our minimum debt service coverage ratio and our minimum debt yield. And then below that, we have our sensitivity analysis based on our exit year and the exit cap rate. And you can test the sensitivity on the IRR, on the multiple on invested capital, or on the total profit. All right, and that is the summary tab. All right, so moving on, we have our cash flow summary tab, which is the next one. And this is really, it's what it is. It's the cash flow summary tab, and it's pulling in our acquisitions assumptions, then our operating assumptions, our exit assumptions, the debt payments, the loan disbursement, all of this stuff. And then at the bottom, it shows our unlevered cash flow, levered cash flow, and then we have our return metrics down below here. So you have our free and clear, which is based on our unlevered cash flows, and our cash on cash, which is based on our levered cash flows. And then we have our risk metrics below that. And this page is actually virtually identical to the more robust hotel model that I originally built. So there is a more in-depth explanation of this page. And if you want to get more in-depth with these return metrics, I go over that as well. And I will perhaps put a link in the description on YouTube, and I will also put a link on our page on the website that can talk about more of this if you're interested. So there's really no inputs here. There's nothing to do here. It's just a summary tab. And now this page is really what's brand new about this model. Here is where you're going to fill out all of your cash flow projections for the operations. And so we have our 3 years of historical operating statements here. So in this example, we have 2016, 17, and 18, and then we have our trailing 12 months. So it's the last 12 months prior to acquisition. And here you're going to be able to manually input all the info because it's actual, it actually happened, so there's no real projection. So you should have the hard numbers. And so everything that's blue is what you're going to fill in. And one of the nuances here, actually, this is a holdover. So let me just delete that. That's nothing. So you don't have to worry about that. That was for an earlier iteration I was thinking about doing. All right, so you have your 3-year historical operating statements, your trailing 12 months. Here's where you put all the inputs in. And actually, these don't need to be blue. So everything that's blue is where you need to actually put in an input. And some of these are blue that actually shouldn't be. So real quick, what I'm doing is Alt-HFC, enter. Let's turn them blue from blue to black. So I'll do that real quickly with all these. And then we'll get into the details. So all right, almost there. All right, so in addition to filling in all of the blue cells, so here you're going to have your actual occupied rooms. So that's where you'll fill that in. But once you move into the projections, you're going to project occupancy instead. So the percentage occupancy. And here I just have 68%. You could change that to whatever you want. And then we have our ADR growth as well. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to these boxes with the plus signs in them. And there's some on top here and there's a bunch on the left. So first I'm going to open this one. And here you're going to be able to dictate, we're going to come down to departmental expenses. And here you're going to be able to dictate roughly what percent of these expenses are fixed, meaning they're hard, they're going to grow with inflation, and then what percent is variable. And this is what really fluctuates with occupancy. And so you put in your fixed percent, you put in your variable percent, and then you just have your inflation growth. And so all of these numbers going out forward are built upon that, these assumptions. And so that is everything for the departmental expenses in terms of projecting the growth. And so again, it's much simpler. The other model is way more robust. You can get into much more detail with this, but this is how we're going to do that in this model. And so the other thing to note here when we open up this, these grouped cells here is that you have your management fee, and here is, which is pretty typical, 3% of gross revenue. So you can base your management fee off of a percentage of gross revenue. So that's what we're doing throughout. All right, and so that is the grouped columns. Now let's go and open up the grouped rows. So I'm going to hit this 2 up here. And here you'll see, and I'm actually going to probably format this a little bit more. We don't really actually need any of this. So here you have your growth method, and you can do either static, which means if it's static, you're going to come into this cell here, and you can put in whatever you want, 4%. And you'll notice as I change this, all of these change. So 4%, 10%, 3%. And so that's if you want just a static, steady growth rate over the years. And then you have the ability to come here. Let me zoom in a little bit. Ability to come here, drop down, you can do custom. And when you're doing custom, here's where you can change each year independently. And so that is the same for every row. So everyone that has this custom input, it's all the same. So there's really, I don't need to really go over any more. So that's pretty much how you grow the assumptions going forward in this model. All right, so I'm going to close this back up. And then down below here, I have property taxes. I actually didn't add that growth methodology, which I may do in a future version for property taxes. And here, you could just put in custom growth. I actually just did the formula and grew it at 2%. But you can do the same thing, or perhaps in a future version I will just update these for these rows as well. But for now, it's just custom input. So it's nothing too difficult. It's pretty straightforward. All right, so the last piece I want to talk about is our reserve for replacement. So what I've done here is it's basically a percent of total revenue, but here I give you the ability to customize it in each year. All right, and I believe that is everything with the operating cash flow tab. All right, so I'm gonna close these up. And then the last tab, I've actually put out a video on this for the other hotel model, so I'm not gonna review this again. I will put a link in the description on YouTube, and also put a link on the Adventures in CRE page. All right, so I hope this is helpful, and I hope you get some use out of this model. Thanks a lot.